Ready when you are, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, well, you're a host, so you know how this world works. So let's hop in. We'll get into all of the good pieces of your entrepreneurship and being an author and having your podcast. So I want to begin with this. First, thank you
Okay.
so much for taking a minute
Yeah.
out. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
You bet. So let's begin our journey with this question. I always start with this. I thought I could put this question to rest, but it seems so pertinent. 6 years ago, especially now when I look at March 13th, I'm like, hold on a second. There's something weird because that was when everything shut down. So 6 years ago, everything shut down and it began. How did you get
Yeah.
through that era, and how has it changed the way that you live and work today?
Okay, great question, by the way. Lovely
Thank you.
leadoff question.
Yeah.
My answer is going to be completely different than probably everyone you've ever interviewed with this specific question. The chain of events that happened prior to COVID in my life was that my husband and I sold our business that we had had and ran for 15 years right before COVID happened. So we literally inked the deal on January 1st, 2020. So right before everything happened, we had moved up just a few months prior to that up near Flagstaff, Arizona, out on a family ranch that's a couple hundred acres in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by all Forest Service. Then all of this happened, and it didn't change much. You know, we were down to just having one kid at home. I was already working remotely out there, and we were getting into other adventures for stuff. So we were already kind of isolated from that move. It didn't really affect us at all, which is pretty wild to think about. Because if you think about people that were still in town, people that are in cities, the only thing that changed for us was that my son was now schooling from home, but we were already involved in the ranch and getting our head around that whole life shift anyways. And so having COVID happen in the rest of the world didn't really do anything for us. Obviously, restaurants and grocery stores and stuff like that had closed, but I wasn't really affected by it. I didn't have people that got sick and died, that were close to me. I didn't have people who had big losses for stuff. I know that it was happening all around us and you could feel the weight of that. The first couple of weeks I was really into turning on the news and sitting in front of that, but I'm not normally that type of person anyways. And so
Yeah.
after a few weeks of that, I just kind of said, well, stuff's falling apart. It just didn't affect my world. And I just
Yeah.
don't think there's very many of us on this planet that can say that COVID really didn't have that big of an effect.
Yeah.
My our older daughters came up and stayed on the ranch with us for a while in another house there, and so it really was a good thing for us. We were able to just grow together as a family because it changed some of their dynamics. But as far as my immediate dynamics, it didn't change much.
It's interesting how we've gotten far enough away from it now where we can ingest this in books and in media and little viral clips. Like I saw a clip come across the feed the other day, and it was a bunch of college kids that were sitting out on like the 12th or 13th of March, and they're like, "Yay, we get to have extra time off, and we'll be back in 3 weeks." And they were all like
Sure.
excited, and it's like no one knew the steamroller that was coming our way. But it's interesting, and an interesting thing about asking this question all the time is overwhelmingly people are positive about it. I don't
Yeah.
get the woe. And the one thing that struck me too, I mean, the toilet paper thing was weird. The hoarding was weird, which was just some weird herd mentality that had nothing to do with anything practical.
Yeah.
But I was surprised that all of the liquor stores were totally intact. I figured that would have been ransacked, but it wasn't. It was
Yeah.
like I hear more from people about detox and diet changes and doing things that helped everything about being healthier.
Yeah. And I think also it helped people prioritize things differently.
Yeah.
I think we came from a culture where things were so much like just working so hard and chasing the money and chasing the success and chasing all of those things. And I think it really helped people prioritize that family is kind of the most important thing, and your health is the most important thing, and taking time to really plug into those things. So I agree. I think by and large, if you look at it from the positive side, there were a lot of positive things that came out of that. Was that a hard time? Absolutely. Right. I feel that from the people that I know and that I'm close with that still were living in town, that had bigger changes, that lost people, all of those things. And there were some really tragic things that came from that, but a lot of good things too,
Yeah.
and when you can kind of look from it from that, I'm always the glass is not only half full, it's all the way full in my world.
Yeah.
So it's like, what is this meant to teach us about the human spirit and about who we are and about connection and about taking care of one another? I don't really focus on the gross parts of that, which are people really getting crazy about getting out of their own lane and telling other people. But that was all rooted in fear.
Yeah.
When you look at people that got really twisted up in, did you get the COVID shot? Did you not get the COVID shot? That's something that's a really personal decision. Excuse me, a really personal decision. And having people that were so rooted in fear that they couldn't like help themselves, but to try to tell other people what they should or shouldn't do. It's pretty wild to look back. I was actually
Yeah.
listening to one of your episodes this morning, and you heard the question about the COVID, and I thought, what a fascinating question. And you mentioned something about 6 years, and I thought, has it really been six
I
years?
know.
And wow, I mean, it really has. What a
Yeah.
what a crazy time.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. So let me ask you this. All the
Yeah.
titles you have, if you had to synthesize everything that you do to have it make sense to a 13-year-old at career day in a school, how do you explain what you do on a daily basis?
Um, I would say I'm a rainmaker.
Okay.
I have energy, and I spread that everywhere, whether that's in the businesses that I run, whether that's in the podcast that I host, whether that's in the writing and the being an author of a book and promoting that. I've worn a lot of hats. When we were up on the ranch, I was running the ranch. I was involved in a like a development that my father-in-law had going on. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm a cannonballer in life. And so, yes, I do all of these things and I change all of these hats out. But at the end of the day, I'm a rainmaker, and I think that's a really fun role to live in this world. And so
Yeah.
you can just do any of the things, but just bring your energy and your good vibes to everything.
Yeah.
It's a whole vibe.
I get it. So let's
Yeah.
peel back the layers and find out how we got here. What did you want to be when you were a kid? When you were that age, what was your dream job?
Yeah, I wanted to be a lawyer,
Okay.
but I grew up on a farm in South Dakota. I was in a family of seven, and we had the opposite of money. And so my life was always more until it wasn't, right? Like I
Yeah.
always chased more. It was always like more success, more money, more all of the things. And then I had a big pivot point about 10 years ago, and it just changed everything for me, where it was like I had gotten to all of the things that I thought I wanted, right? I had the fancy car and the big house in Paradise Valley and all of the things. And I'd never been more miserable in my life. And
Mhm.
it's like there's all of these things when you're a kid that they tell you this is where happiness lives. But then when you get there and happiness isn't there, it almost feels like a sham, you know?
Yeah. Interesting. So, what were the seeds that were planted based on that life of having so many siblings and being out in South Dakota? What was implanted into you that allowed you to find this strength, to find the success, and more important, find this clarity that you give to others now?
Yeah. My dad was always an extremely hard worker. Being a farmer and a rancher, that's just nonstop, 24 hours a day. There's always something that needs to be done. And so he really instilled that in me, that just work really, really hard, and then the part of it where it really affected me not to have money. It really messed with me because I was embarrassed about that. I was embarrassed when I was at school and with my friends and what we had. And so that was something that really planted seeds of, I will never have that life. I will never have to um, think about not being able to say yes to my kids if they wanted to go do dance lessons or be involved in something that costs money. And that was something that I know that was hard for my parents. But with 5 kids, it wasn't like, oh, sure, you want to go take gymnastics? No problems. It was like, we don't have the money for that.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to have that. That really drove me. So combined with the work ethic and just kind of my spirit of what I am, I'm a big cannonballer in this life. And so if there's something that I look at that I'm like, I wonder what would happen if I tried that, I just go try it.
Yeah.
I just live this life where it's like, oh, I worked for so many different people in the construction industry. And it was like, I think I can do this better. I think I can do this better. And so my husband and I decided, let's start our own business. Then it was, oh, there's this whole VRBO market that came out, several years ago, 10, 12, 15 years ago, whatever it was, where it was really hot. And I'm like, oh, let's do that. So that was like a side hustle that I had on top of, running a business with 60 employees and just all of this stuff. It was always just go, 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 go. And I realized that wasn't really sustainable, but it was how I spent my 20s and 30s, just really giving it hell.
So what was the moment? What was the revelatory moment that made you kind of switch from the material and get into something else and to have a level of clarity?
Yeah, it's wild. I have a sister who was really close to me in age, 18 months apart, and she died unexpectedly about 10 years ago, and
Wow.
it rocked my world. I had come from this place where I was all in this hustle culture, being in construction. It was very male dominated. I've always been in my masculine and very comfortable in that.
Yeah.
The bad part of that is I never was in touch with my emotions. And so when that happened, it just delivered a truckload of grief to my front door. I had no idea how to handle it. So
Wow.
I spent 18 months after that just turning my life into a royal mess, before I decided it was time to go check myself into rehab and put the drink down and all of that. But that was a really big thing because it made me realize I didn't have a relationship with my family in the way that I wanted to. Like I was always there in the physical form, but my mind was always somewhere else. I was always on the next hustle, the next work, sending an email. The kids would come in when I was on the computer and I'm sending an email at the same time that they're trying to talk to me. What a terrible way to live. But I didn't know any better. I thought that's how I measured success, was how much money and how much I was able to produce. And it just changed the perspective for me because it's like you don't get today back. And
Yep.
I'm never going to look back at the end of my life, from the 80-year-old perspective and go, God, I really wish I had worked more hours. And so
Uh-huh.
I needed to really like have that slap me across the face of, let's change our priorities here. And that doesn't mean you don't still work hard, but maybe have a balance in there so that you understand how important and how precious this gift of today is.
For sure. So let me ask you this. Who's been that inspirational force through the highs and lows that you've lived through to find this place you're calling right now? Who has been that hero in your life?
You know, it, I don't know how this is going to come off, but I'm going to say it anyways because this is what comes to my head. Myself, and
Yeah.
not from an ego myself, but just the human spirit. When you realize that the human spirit is so resilient and so incredible, we can go through so many different things and then use those things um, as stepping stones, as tools, as leverage. It's not like, oh, look what happened to me. It's like looking from a place of being grateful that those things happen to you because you're able to really take those opportunities and make those things that shine instead of being, so sour.
So let's get into the Life Hack Playbook. Talk to me about when you go into a project like this, what was the thought process? How long did it take for you to incubate and get this idea on pulp and make it real? How did this process happen?
Yeah. So over the last 8 or 9, 10 years, I've been on this really big mission of figuring out who I was without all of the numbing, without the workaholic, without the drinking on top, with all of those things. I was a really young mom in life. And so figuring out who I was a big process for me. During that, I was doing all sorts of therapy and books and podcasts and healing modalities. And I started just kind of taking out the nuggets of things that really resonated with me. And then I was using them on people in my life, coworkers, my best friend, my husband, my kiddos. And all of these things, the way that I visualized really started having an impact on them, in addition to what a huge impact it had on me. And in watching all of this happen, it just felt like it needed to come out. I felt like I channeled this book. It wasn't like I set out to like, oh, I'm going to write this book. It just was like, this needs to happen because I saw all of the positive impact that it was having on all of these other people. My brain is really kind of silly because it takes things that maybe are abstract concepts or things that maybe people can't get their heads around. And the way that I visualize it and distill it out is such that other people go, I didn't really see boundaries that way before. Oh, I didn't really visualize triggers and what those are supposed to be. Or, oh, energy, what a great way to visualize that. And you're actually able to work with that and have an impact on your life instead of just going through your life in airplane mode.
So, as a podcaster, what was the first podcast you got hooked on?
Oh gosh. Um, I really like Chelsea Handler,
Yeah.
funny stuff where she just doesn't know BS. I like when people call it like they see it and don't
Yeah.
really give a crap about what other people think because I just think we're all meant to be our unique people, and so many people get offended and twisted up in things that it's just
Uh-huh.
like, no, that's not really how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Everyone is not the same. We all have our unique things, and stop clutching your pearls.
Yeah.
So Chelsea Handler was fun. I really like Brene Brown. She
Yep.
was a big inspiration for me and my work. Michael Singer, I love his work. And so listening to him, he's just like a calming force. So more, personal improvement stuff is really where I focus my podcast time.
Yeah. Chelsea, when she had her show, I mean, I've always been a fan of her, but I saw something come across the other day. She was interviewing Will Ferrell and I think Paul Rudd, and she broke him down. Like I could see they didn't want to do it, but she just totally tore him apart. And you don't ever see Will Ferrell fall out of character and have somebody
Sure.
do that. But yeah, he couldn't take it. Like she just kept asking these questions, and it was just like they couldn't take it anymore. They just fell apart. So it's
Yeah. And she
fun.
has a fun personality, right? She's who she is
Hmm.
unapologetically. If you
Hmm.
don't like it, change the channel. And
That's
I'm
it.
very much a fan of that whole perspective of just we're not all meant to be for everyone,
Uh-huh.
so just be your individual authentic self.
Yep.
Your people will find you,
Yep.
you know.
For sure. So along these lines of people that we just talked about, if you could meet one person alive on the planet right now and have a lunch with them, hang out with them, some of them might help you on your journey. Who would you love
Yeah.
to hang and talk to?
God, Martha Stewart. And if she could bring Snoop Dogg, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
that would be cool.
Yeah, Martha Stewart is just what a badass,
I
right?
know.
She's 84 years old. She didn't even start in the line of things that she's in until she was in her early 50s. And so
Mhm.
as a woman, that's super inspirational. As a woman in our society now, we've been very much conditioned to be small, not take up space, be palatable, not make sure not to make other people uncomfortable. And I just think she cracks that wide open in such a beautiful way that it gives other women permission to do that. And that stuff that really fuels women for one another of just, we don't have to keep playing that game. You
Yeah,
go ahead and be that badass. That's all right.
that's it. So
Yeah.
speaking of that gumption and that energy, what is it for you every day to juggle all of these things that you do, to do it well, to make an impact on others, to take care of your family and your soul? When that alarm clock does or doesn't go off, what is that energy every day?
Yeah. I'm that person that's like, I saw a mug one time and it just lands for me where it's like when my feet hit the floor in the morning, the devil goes, oh shit, she's up.
Uh-huh.
Because it's just, I wake up with that. I dance in the morning when I'm getting ready. I have this kind of infectious energy that I just bring to everything that I do. It's been a big difference with the balance of understanding that it's not about how many hours I put into the day. It's more intentional with taking care of myself, making sure that that energy is properly nurtured and cared for so that I can continue to share that with other people. It's really counterintuitive when you realize that we're meant to go all in on ourselves and
Yeah.
figure ourselves out and take care of ourselves. And by doing that, you're able to give from abundance. I spent a lot of years giving out of resentment and obligation and not taking care of myself first because that felt like exactly what I was supposed to do as a mom and as the person that kind of took care of a lot of stuff. It's just the opposite. We're meant to take care of ourselves first, and then the abundance and the overflow gets on other people. And what a game changer that is. So, yeah,
Yeah.
just figuring out what my day is going to look like that's going to take care of Anne and what she wants to do. Yes, there's a lot of work that goes into that, but also just the things that are the quiet stuff in between or the fun guilty pleasures in between of
Yeah.
just time for myself or reading a book or carving out an hour. It's important to do that. When
Yeah.
people say you don't have time, it's like, no, you didn't make time because
Yeah.
we all have the same 24 hours and you have to figure out what that priority is and then honor yourself in that.
For sure. The other thing that can change and make a profound impact on us are these random acts of kindness. What's one of the nicest things that anybody's ever done for you in your life?
Oh, God. you know probably just my husband holding space, and I didn't even realize that until much later in my life. But when another human being holds space for you to just go through whatever it is that you're going through without saying anything, right, just with holding space, that's been the honor of my life to be able to have him do that for me.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into that young version of you in South Dakota on the farm, and you walk into the room, and there's a film projector, and you click play, and there's a highlight
Mm-hmm.
reel, a 60-second highlight reel of this life that you've orchestrated and you lived. Would that young version of you believe this happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I always believed I could do anything. I believe in mindset. I believe in, that your thoughts have power, that your words have weight. And so I always did. That was like, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And I'm not a big I'm not a big like long-term planner because I think there's so many things that change over the course of a year. I'm not even the same person as I was a year ago. But yeah, that 8-year-old would know that I was exactly where. And I think about that a lot. That's something that I talk about in my book, and it's something that I share with other people because I think, if you're in tune with your 8-year-old and you're in tune with your 80-year-old,
Yeah.
where you're doing things in life where that 80-year-old would be proud that you left things better than you found them. And what I know is that at the end of my life, that 8-year-old version of Anne and the 80-year-old version are going to be standing on a chair cheering for me.
Yeah. That's great. So let's
Yeah.
say you walked into a room of people that have known you in a business sense throughout your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you go to a podium and you can tell them one fun story about your life. Maybe the first concert you went to, a seminal sporting experience, a travel, you went, a magical travel experience, something, outrunning a bear, jumping out of an airplane, some kind of fun story. What would you tell that room that might shed a little bit more humanity on who you are?
What a great question, and also such a hard one to come up with.
Yes.
I just have a whole life of that, of just being really carefree. From the outside, it looks pretty crazy. So I don't think I have any one thing that stands out, but the thing that I would share with people is care less about all of the things that you care about right now. When
Yeah.
people are concerned about what other people think, or what will mom say if I do this, or what will, this person say, do all the things. I've touched all the burners on the stove, and being able to share that with people, and just the cannonballing energy that I bring to stuff. Did I make mistakes? Of course. Do I have regrets? Not a single one. I learned from all of those things, from all of those stories collectively that come together to say who I am as a person, but it is always from a kind heart and a generous giving spirit and energy that just goes for days. I'm
Yeah.
that I'm the crazy one that, walks into the room and everyone's like, you can just feel my energy before I even walk in. But
Yeah.
that's just who I am, right? When you're a rainmaker, and when you're that person that just is infectious energy and magnetic, and people want to be around you because you're positive and you don't dwell on the negative. It's just a culmination of all of those things to be that cannonballer and to be the rainmaker and have that spirit and that energy.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Of everything that you've done, accomplished, overcome, and become, what are you the proudest of? Happiest about?
Oh God, the mom that I am.
Yeah.
The mom that I am, and I think it was because I didn't do it well for so long. I did sure, I can write the checks, I can say yes, I can always make certain that everybody is taken care of well financially, but I had nannies that raised my kids when I was starting my businesses and when I was hustling, because I thought that that was the right thing to do. And
Yeah.
looking back, it's like, again, I wouldn't change anything. I don't have regrets, but I look at it now and I have incredible relationships with my kiddos. I have a 30-year-old and a 26-year-old and a 19-year-old, and those love muffins have big spots in my life, and me there. So it's just being a mom and being an incredible partner to my person.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, gets your book, listens to your podcast, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Mm. Oh, I'm somebody who doesn't take no for an answer. I'm someone who doesn't make excuses. I'm someone who gets it done no matter what it takes. I'm someone who's very strong in my beliefs, and just a good person that wants to take care of other people. I would rather other people eat before I do, and that's a really cool place to come from in life.
Yeah.
We see those people in life who are first to the trough type people. Those are not the people that make you feel good about stuff. It's the people who make certain that you're taken care of and that you eat first and that you feel good. The person that gives the compliment and makes certain that other people are smiling, not from a
Yeah.
people pleasing type of way, but just in a, you understand the impact of what your energy brings to things,
Yeah.
and really using that to make everybody else around you amazing.
So final hard question. You can get into a time machine and you can go back in time and see one event in human history. Where do you want to go? Now you could
Mm,
go in the future. I wouldn't recommend it with things
right,
happening. But if you
right.
could go back and see one thing, it wouldn't create a weird like Back to the Future tear in time. You get to witness it, and that's it.
God, you have excellent questions, Joe, but
Thank you.
like a lot of like, ooh,
Yeah.
God, where would I go back in time? you know I would go back in time to when to where my sister passed.
Yeah.
I would be with her. I would be with her so that so that she wasn't scared, and that, and maybe she wasn't, but that's always something that calls to me. But
Yeah.
that's the only thing I can think of.
Those are good. Those are the ones too. Sometimes it would be interesting to go way, way back generationally to the beginning of bloodlines and to see
Yeah,
how things kind of developed and became the way they were. Because, there's always those levels of either just generational understanding or generational traumas that can be abated if you
yeah,
understand. It's just understanding history makes you a better steward of taking care of the future. So that would be
yeah,
that would be definitely fun. So
yeah. It's a great answer.
so let me. So if anybody wants to get your book, if anybody wants to tune in, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah. So probably the best place that you could start is just the website. I have annekarber.com. You can also check out let's get naked podcast.com, which is about the podcast. My book is the Life Hack Playbook, which is available on Amazon or any other online retailer that you get your books from. And my company, FJ, we handle small business logistics for other companies, and so you can find us there. But if you just get to my name, you'll spider out from there and be able to find out all the things that I'm getting into trouble with these days.
I love it. And so great to meet you. I love your energy. We need it more and more in this world that we live in. So thank you for taking a minute out today. This has been wonderful. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you, Joe.